All right. Thank you so much for joining. My name is Taylor. I am a deployment specialist with Suitebriar, but today we're here for the admin office hours, the topic being data loss prevention. And my coworker, Cal Sutherland, will be presenting. He is a senior account manager with Suitebriar, and we're very excited for this presentation. And so with that, we'll go ahead and get started. Looks like we've still got some more people uh, coming on in, but we'll just go ahead and get started with the presentation.
Thanks a lot, Taylor. All right. So, as mentioned, my name is Cal Sutherland. I am an account manager at Sweetbriar. I'll be presenting DLP to you today. We're going to be covering really from the basics to understand the use case for DLP, and then some of the newer developments on reporting, managing DLP alerts, which is oftentimes a bigger topic than just setting it up. It's really around what to do. So, we're going to cover that as well. I want to make sure that the questions that you might have as we go through the presentation are answered. So Taylor and Courtney will be here to help triage those answers. We're happy to unmute you. If you raise your hand, we can stop and unmute you so you can ask your question. Or if you'd feel more comfortable utilizing the chat, the Hangouts chat within this meeting, you should see a little comment or chat button on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen where you can feel free to ask your questions there, and we'll make sure that those get answered either during the presentation or at the end of the presentation when we have a little bit of a question period. All right, so with that, let's get started. So the first thing we're going to start off with is just a general understanding of what DLP is. We're going to dive a lot deeper into how to set it up and sort of leverage the reporting. So that'll also give you a great idea of or what DLP is, excuse me. So DLP stands for data loss prevention. And it's basically a tool that you have within the Google Workspace admin panel, which allows you to set up rules to prevent information from being exposed outside of your domain. Now, that information might be personal identifiable information such as driver's license, social security, credit card numbers, or that might even be custom information that's specific to your business. So you can customize these rules, use keywords and other things we'll talk about today to make sure that these rules are proactively blocking or at least alerting your administrators about your users attempting to share data, whether that's through Drive or mail, that might have that sensitive type of information in it. So let's dive a little bit deeper. This is basically the summary of the DLP flow. So as I mentioned, the first thing you're going to want to do is configure your rules. So your administrator would go into the control panel, and we're going to look at that together today, and would configure a data loss prevention rule. From there, once you decide to activate that rule, automatically the DLP system will scan your Drive files for any existing information that might already be exposed outside of your domain. And if it finds anything, it will trigger whatever action you chose that we'll look at as well. Sometimes that action can be to block the sharing, making sure that that sensitive information is no longer exposed. In other cases, it might just be an alert so that the admin can dive a little bit deeper and investigate more about the file and make sure it is something that they want to pull back. So that's where the alerts and reporting come into play. All right, so we're going to look at some sample use cases. I'll probably won't spend too much time on this slide because as we go through the examples or actually set up a rule ourselves, we're really going to touch on a lot of this. But just to give you an idea, some of the use cases for DLP can be to audit the usage of sensitive content that might already be shared. So as I mentioned, once you've set up your DLP rule, it will kind of retroactively go back and look at your existing Drive files and make sure that they don't have sensitive data exposed. What's nice about that is when you set up those rules, you can choose to only alert the administrator so that you're not interfering with any existing business or sharing that's already out there. You don't necessarily have to block it. You might just want to do a general scan and get some reports for you to investigate later. You can do that. So we talked about directly warning end users not to share sensitive content. That's probably something you'd also want to do through communications once you turn on DLP. And then this is just some other use cases, right? So preventing social security, alerting we talked about, and then we're going to also look, we're going to spend some time on investigating because investigating the reports is, again, a big piece of this. So at the end of this, we're going to have a question period. Let's jump more into the actual demo of what the product looks like and set up some rules ourselves. So I'm going to stop the sharing right now, and I'm going to switch screens, and we'll take a look at the admin panel together. Again, as we go through this, if any questions come up, please do not hesitate to ask. I want to make sure that you get all the information that you need in regards to data loss prevention. All right, so you should see on the screen the control panel. Everyone should be pretty familiar with that. There's quite a few places to look at when it comes to data loss prevention. One important thing to keep in mind is that data loss prevention was originally part of the drive configuration settings, and it was pushed over to data protection. So if a while ago you set up DLP in the old section, you might want to move your rules to this new area. And some of the differences between the new area are, they're somewhat minimal, but I think the main one is that if you set up rules within this new area, the kind of the new data protection area, the rules that are triggered will affect the reports on the dashboards and stuff that we're going to look like after. So there's some dashboards that will give us a high level report on how many times these data protection rules are being triggered and what severity they are, whether they're like high or medium severity level, that sort of thing. And those reports won't get they won't tick the reports up or down if they're in the old DLP section. You'll want to set them up in this section. So that's one of the main reasons you want to come into this data protection area. So from now on, make sure you come here. All right, so this is where you're going to configure your data protection rule or your data loss prevention rule specifically. Right now, if you came in here, you'd most likely already have some metrics here. This is some automatic scans that happen. You can turn this off if you don't want to have this automatic scan happen right here. But basically, it just gives you some general ideas about what type of data is already being shared externally. And even just metrics on files that are not necessarily shared externally, but just have that sensitive information in it. So it can give you an idea of what types of rules you might want to configure. And even further on that, you'll see that it now has an area where it will give you a recommended rule based on some of the findings that it's finding up here. So I can review that rule and just do it with a couple of clicks. I can actually create this rule or these two rules that the system is recommending to me. Lower down here is where I can actually create my rules, and we're going to talk about the detectors where we can customize this. The final thing I want to talk about as far as these data protection insights, if you're curious to know where they're pulling these metrics from, or what kind of rules they're using to get this data, there is a page that we can share with you, and you can actually see that there's 50 common detectors that they use to kind of create this this dashboard right here. So if I go back here, you'll see that these are the common ones that they're kind of using, and you can easily create these yourself within DLP if you want to kind of utilize these and warn yourself or block these automatically. So you can see that it's looking for these types of information: driver's license, social security. It's going through Medicare account numbers, has some Canadian information. So even by region, I didn't notice that right here. So Mexico, passport numbers, that sort of thing. So these are the kind of 50 rules that it's looking at in order to build this dashboard. So it's a nice kind of resource that you can look at and see if you want to maybe leverage the same rules in your own area over here. All right, with that, let's move on to actually creating a rule. So you can see there's two areas here, the manage rules area and the manage detector. So this is where the magic happens. This is where we actually create the rule. It's going to proactively block people from sharing sensitive data if that's what I want to do, et cetera, et cetera. This area is where I can kind of further customize or make keywords and like my own custom stuff that usable within these rules. So this is kind of just where I create my list of keywords. So I might be using a word list, which is just a straight list of words. Maybe you have like a secret project within your organization and you don't want anything regarding that secret project out. You might have a code word. You could add that in the word list, and anything with that code word in it would get blocked if you created that rule after that. The regular expression area is if you really wanted to get even further granularity with the rules. So if you had some very specific types of data you wanted to look at, and I can never explain it very well, so I usually just jump over these examples here. So you can see that it says any phrase with the word stock tips is going to get blocked. So you'd have to use these kind of regular expression examples. So this code will look for different ways that stock tips can be written, or any of these words, right? It'll look, if you add this to the detectors, it'll look for any combinations of these words within your rule. So, these might be something you want to copy, but I think from these you can kind of get an idea of how you can leverage the regular expressions to further customize keywords and sort of strings of data, that kind of stuff that you might want to block. So PO numbers might even be a common one, purchase order numbers. If you want to make sure nothing gets sent out with a purchase order number, you could use that. All right, let's jump back to our actual rules. So that's basically the detectors area. I can create a word list or use those regular expressions to create my own detectors. Once I create my detector, it's going to appear here in this list of detectors, but it's not going to do anything. I actually have to go back to the data protection area, and I have to make a rule that's going to leverage those detectors. So let's go back into manage rules, or go into manage rules here, and let's actually create a rule. So this is a demo environment. When you jump in here, you're probably not going to have 300 DLP rules in here. So to kind of disregard this, we're going to go over here and we're going to actually create our rule. This will just bring us back to the detectors list. And then, if you wanted to export this to a file, you wanted to look at your rules later on, you can do that. So we're going to add a rule. We can create a blank rule, which is just going to allow us to use our own detectors, and we can use our, those predefined social security checkers and kind of create our own customized rule. Most likely what you're going to start out with is one from a template, which is going to be a nicely created template by Google that's going to cover a lot of the most common types of data that you're going to want to, protect yourself from being exposed. So looking at this, we got prevent financial information, health, we got personal identifiable information from the US. So that's going to have, social security, all that kind of stuff. Canada would have social insurance. Am I doing this backwards? SIN numbers. I think it's either or. But basically, you get what my point is. PII for UK, et cetera, et cetera. So I can choose one of these templates right here. We'll choose financial information for the example. And it's going to kind of pre-fill out the name and description. I might want to change this accordingly, but I'll just use the example. And in some cases, you might even want to have this rule affect only a subset of your users. So think of this being a rule around financial information. I might have maybe the finance department have a need to be able to share documents that have financial information in it. So they might want to get excluded, that finance team. So if I wanted to do that, I can just click on organizational units or groups and choose which of the two I want to exclude. We'll use OUs because I do believe I have a finance OU. I do. So we'll click done here, and we'll go ahead and exclude the finance department. And so now the rule is going to include everyone except for finance. And we'll go ahead and choose exactly what the rule is going to do now. So it's going to affect any files that are created in Drive, and then Google Chat. So this is in beta. It was just recently added. So you can protect this financial information from being sent through chat and files uploaded. Definitely in beta, and we can learn a little bit more about that chat beta afterwards. All right, so conditions. This is going to be pretty much already pre-filled out for me since I chose a template. As you can see, it says or here. So it's going to say if any of these match, it's going to trigger. If I wanted all of them to match, I can do and. So all of these would have to match for the rule to trigger. Pretty straightforward, your Boolean kind of changes there. You can get really crazy and start embedding rules within rules to make sure that they're all met and that kind of thing. But that's super advanced and probably not something we would want to cover today. All right, so looking at this is a financial template. So it's looking at credit card numbers globally, bank account numbers, all that kind of bank routing stuff. And then I can even further customize this. How sure do I want the rule to be before it triggers? So for credit card numbers, I might want to lower this threshold to make sure it could be medium sure and it'll still trigger. If I want to be make sure I catch even more things in the net of DLP, by default, it'll be on very high, because the rule itself is pretty smart and it will catch most credit card numbers. Unique matches. So this is pretty straightforward, right? How many times does the same credit card number have to appear in the document before the rule triggers? It's at 1, so it just has to appear once. And the minimum match count means how many, credit card numbers that are different have to appear in here. So All right, I have that backwards. So the credit card number would have to be written here more than once if I change it to 2, and different credit card numbers would have to be in here if I change it to 2. That makes sense. So moving on, you can, obviously close this stuff, and then you can change it to a condition or remove part of it. Again, this area here is really when you want to start to get more advanced with your rules. You're most likely going to stick with the template. And you can change even what part of the document is scanned, but we're not really going to play with the template. Let's move on. We can add some of the predefined content that we had. So that list of data that we created in that predefined match there. So I can go ahead and choose maybe one of the regular expressions that we didn't create, but we talked about, right? So I talked about that PO number, so we can use that regular expression in addition to this. So if any of these match, including that PO search, it will trigger this rule. So, you can tag those on as you go. If I hit continue, I can now choose exactly what happens when the rule finds, a file that fits that criteria, meaning it has a credit card number in it, and somebody has tried to share it outside of the domain. That's the important piece, right? This is really looking for those documents being shared outside of your domain. So if I just choose action here, I can just leave this blank. And this is a great way to start. If you wanted to hit continue here, it's going to go ahead and retroactively scan all of your documents. You're going to be able to look through the reports, get the alerts, and understand what type of data is currently shared externally without interfering with your users. So they won't see any warnings. They won't get any blocks, but it'll give you as an admin a great place to start. If you do want to take an advanced, more like step, if it does find something, an actual trigger, again, the first thing, this one will allow the external sharing to happen, but will warn the user that they're sharing sensitive information. Obviously, this one will just completely block it. And this one's important, especially if you consider the retroactive side of things. So if you choose to block this and you hit continue, it will block any new attempts of somebody sharing a document with a credit card number, that relating to our example. But it will also block any documents that have credit card numbers in them that are currently shared as well. So it's going to also block those retroactively shared files as well. So that's another important consideration. And another reason you might want to start here and then block them, do communications with your users, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of planning, a lot of options you have with the DLP. I'm not really sticking on this guy right here. This has to do with information rights management, as Google would consider this. Anyone with edit this won't affect them, right? So they'd have to be a viewer or a commenter. And if they had those rights, then they wouldn't be able to take these actions on the file if it had a credit card number in it. So it's kind of like a very minimal step you can take in relation to DLP. All right, so in our case, we'll just leave it on blank. So we're just gonna, let it scan, get some reporting, not affect our users. And then we're gonna choose exactly how this rule is gonna appear in the alert center. So I mentioned at the start of the call, we're gonna spend quite a bit of time on triaging this and understanding, when you do get a hit, what do you do? Like, how do you investigate it? Because it's nice to have these rules, but you got to understand how to, triage them afterwards as well. So this is where kind of this starts to come into play. So how are these triggers going to show up in the alert center? Do I consider this a low, a high, or a medium? This is really up to me. It's a credit card number, so I would consider it pretty high, right? It's a risk of financial loss. So we'll go ahead and put high there. We'll want to send this to the alert center, of course, and then I can even alert super administrators by email, or I can have a group email address that we use for notifications, or even a non-admin who just wants to get DLP alerts for some bizarre reason. We can go ahead and add their email address there as well. So since it's a demo account, I don't really want to mess with alerts, email notifications, but you probably want to turn on with one of these guys. You know what? We'll do it just for the sake of the demo. And then we'll hit continue. All right, last page here is just a review. So it's going to give me an idea of what we are creating here, the name, who it's going to affect. We talked about excluding the finance department, which was important. We didn't use groups to exclude anybody. It's looking at Google Drive. So we also are going to mention that there is a portion of Google Drive. There's a portion of DLP, that also scans for mail, right? Because somebody could send a credit card number out through mail. So that's going to be configured in a different area that we'll talk about. But this is covering Drive. And these are the conditions we put. You'll see that I think my PO number should be in there. It's probably this guy right here. So at this point, the action we were taking is no action. Only logs will be collected. and then we're going to choose the severity of high. So we're going to hit create. And remember, from this point on, if I hit create, actually, it's going to ask me if I want to activate it. Yeah. So if I hit active here, it's going to start to retroactively scan and my existing Drive documents, and I'll start to see alerts come in regarding any files that it found. And that's it. So now my rule is somewhere lost in this huge list of DLP rules. It's probably in here somewhere. But yeah, you would have obviously a lot less in here. There's our guy right here, and it's active, and I can just easily delete it if I don't need it anymore. So that's the easy part of DLP, just really configuring it. There's obviously some planning you want to do around communications and understanding if you want to just do alerts to admins first or actually turn on an action after that. I think the next thing we're going to want to look at is alerts, right? Like how do we manage the alert center? How do we triage those incidents? Lots of places we can do that. I'm just going to stop for a second. Taylor, Courtney, we have any questions, anything coming in? We're good so far. It looks pretty blank, right? We're good?
Good so far.
All right. So again, a reminder to please ask any questions as we go through it. And if you want me to stop and kind of touch on something again, I'm happy to do that. All right. So let's talk about alerts. So we have the alert center here. Okay. This is one area that you're going to probably spend a lot of time on it when you're looking through the alerts. Then we also have the dashboard, right? So this is the area that gives you high-level metrics on these rules being triggered, how many times they're being triggered. And then it also kind of gives you a easy click investigation that will jump you to this tool, which is where we're also going to spend a lot of time to actually dive deeper into when you're actually looking at a specific file, why it triggered the rule, what type of information is in it. And then this will also give you the tools for your admin to actually stop that sharing. If it's, if you didn't already block it with the rule, you can then take action and block it manually, or even add yourself as to the file or become the owner of it. All that stuff is possible with the investigation tool. And then the last little area we might spend a bit of time on is the rules area. For your administrators, as a side note, I've noticed from a lot of discussions I've had, most people haven't spent a lot of time in here, and it's because it's changed a lot. So I recommend you come back in here and just take a look at some of the rules that you can now create. So you can even easily create a DLP rule straight from here, by the way. So this will do the same thing we just did, but just kind of from the rules area. More importantly, though, there's some activity rules that you might be interested in. So this has nothing to do with DLP. So I'm not going to spend time on this, but I implore you to maybe investigate what's possible with the activity rules. So if you had a rule like you wanted to say, I want to know when a user starts deleting hundreds of files from their drive, right? If that ever happens, you could actually create an activity rule to automatically alert your admins when something like that happens. So again, off topic of DLP, I tend to do that, but this is also an area that you can easily create a DLP rule and then also kind of filter through your existing rules and look at what you have. So I can easily look at rule types and filter to the DLP ones, right? Hit apply, and then it's only going to show me like my existing DLP rules. And actually, here's our rule that we created today. So very similar to what we just showed you. Another place to work, but also ties very well into the other types of rules are available. So I implore you to take a look here. Some information up here. Some of these guys are very interesting. All right, so those are the different areas that we can really triage through the DLP. We talked about Alert Center, and then we jumped down to the security area, the security center, I should say, and we talked about dashboard and investigation tools. So these are the three kind of areas we're going to talk about. And then there's also, of course, the reporting area. There's a rules reporting area that we probably won't spend too much time. I don't want to bombard you with too much information, but again, this all has to do with rules. So if I come back here, this is an audit trail of the rules and when they were triggered. Keep in mind, this is not specific to the DLP only. I can also choose all of the activity rules as well. So I can filter this to DLP and look through like audits of when this happened, who the user was, that kind of stuff. So very, very interesting stuff. The rules audit log is very helpful. I'm going to jump back to the Alert Center, which is where we're going to start our triage and sort of investigation of DLP. So the DLP rules in the alert center. So again, this is very similar to what I just said. This is not just an alert center for DLP. This is all types of different alerts. Great place for your admins to come in and understand what's happening within your domain. I mentioned that activity rule about people deleting bunch of drive stuff. And these are the rules actually being triggered. So I could click on this guy and then really understand, okay, well, who's doing this? When did it happen? This is a demo, so it looks like we were just testing anything greater than 0. But yeah, it would give me a lot more details about that deletion, and I can investigate. Let's go back to DLP. I'm going to jump on to add a filter. We're going to go back to the alert type here, and we're going to look for DLP in here. Data protection, probably. Data loss prevention. There we go. So we select this guy, filter that. And now we're looking at all the times that rule got triggered or DLP rules were triggered. It'll tell me the rule type or the rule name and all that information, the severity that we chose ourselves, and how it's been triaged. So your admins can actually use this kind of like a incident management system where you click on the alert and then you have a bunch of options that you can do. So as we mentioned, I believe I can change the severity. It's going to trigger based on the rule itself, but I can, if this is a higher severity, I can go ahead and do that. And then as I'm working through this exact alert, you can see I have a bunch of information. So which rule got triggered, when it triggered, with whom the drive filed was shared. So who is the external recipient or who the recipient was, the document ID. If I have access to the document, I can just click that and it'll actually bring me to the document. So if it's like a public document or I'm shared on it, easily access it. The detector that was used within that rule, all that kind of information. I also have a lot of drop-down stuff here. So as I was mentioning, this can kind of be an incident management for your admins. I can start this kind of like a status. I'm working this now. So if other admins see this alert, they'll see somebody's working on it. I can assign myself to it as the person who will be working this incident. And again, other people will be able to easily see that. I can then delete it if I'm done with it. And I also have a comment section right here too. So as I'm working through it, I can say, whatever date it is today or something. It's going to show the date anyway, actually, but whatever. Possible. Okay, checked with user, let's just say, right? So we do that guy right here. It's going to show an entry right here, again, with the data already there. And then it's going to show the incident kind of update. So a nice place so you can work through these if you really want to make sure that you manage each of these alerts, especially the high level ones. You could filter, maybe only manage the high ones. And then more importantly, I kind of mentioned that when we were talking about the security center, if you go to the dashboard, it's going to give you some metrics, and then you can easily one click, it'll investigate there. Same thing from the alert center. I got this guy right here. So if I click this button, it's going to look up this document and it's going to give me a bunch more information about it. So let's do that. Let's click on investigate alert. So very convenient because it's going to fill in all this information about the file for me, right? It was a before, after this date. This is the event we're looking at. This is the rule that was triggered. Tell me more details. Now, again, this is a demo account, so obviously the worst example I could have given you. Let me see if we could just find another DLP rule quickly that we can investigate. So we'll actually, let's do it from another area while we're doing that. So let's go to the dashboard. And now the security dashboard, again, covers a lot of stuff, email security, spam, phishing, all this stuff. It's an Enterprise Plus specific feature, so you have to have Enterprise Plus to have access to this area. If you're on Enterprise Standard, you would still have DLP, but you would not have this specific area, just to be clear. You'll see there's some metrics here. So if I click on View Report, let's go back a little bit further since this is a demo account so we can get some data in here. But now you can see I'm getting some metrics about the times, DLP incidents over time. So I'll see that the low severity, there was 28 examples of that rule being hit. 20 on this date, and then 8 others you can see across the board here. Now, more information about the actual incidents is available, the date, which severity it was, the data source, right? So you're going to typically see Drive here. Gmail is going to be added to all these different areas soon, and you'll start to see like Drive and Gmail coming up as a data source, but that's not available yet. If we click on Actions, we can even see more metrics about the rules themselves. So we'll see the alert, the rules that were that had an alert that will alert the user but will still allow the sharing. And then we'll see the rules broken down by any rules that actually block the sharing. So we can see also by severity. And you'll also see I got, again, a nice little magnifying glass. So I can click that guy and we can hit the investigation tool. It's going to jump and give me metrics based on not that specific file now, right? Now we clicked on an investigation about these 65 different file alerts. So it's actually looking up the alert now and the different types and files that were hit around that alert. So now I'm getting different rules, right? Different alerts that occurred, but I can action all these as well. So I can go ahead and click on actions. I can activate the rules on this. I can deactivate rules on this if I wanted to bulk action this type of DLP rule. So again, lots of really easy one-click ways of investigating rules themselves, or if I wanted to actually investigate the file itself, let's go back to the alert center. We'll go ahead and filter our rule back to data loss prevention. It was pretty low down. Here we go. And let's choose a different one that we can hopefully investigate. Was that the one I chose? Let's see this guy here. And this one hopefully has not been deleted yet. It has. All right. So yeah, due to this being a demo environment, I apologize. But basically, you would just get information about the file and all the events that happened around that file for that trigger to happen. So let's just try one more or even two more. Yep. Yeah, those files have all been deleted. We've been doing a lot of cleanup in the demo environment. So typically it would just show you the file itself. So in this case, I would be easily able to access this file because I could just share myself to it. But that's basically the idea. I click this button, it will bring me to the investigation tool, and I can show you exactly what the results would look like just by doing a manual search. So if we do a quick drive search, again, this part you wouldn't have to do because the investigation button would kind of just put you there. Let's see what we can find. Let's say we'll do date and we'll search. Should get some results here. See, I think it's a pretty long condition, so it's going to take a bit of time. Let me look for something else, maybe. Apologies for the delay. There we go. All right, so that was a really wide search because I pretty much searched for anything before this date. So there was a little bit of delay. Apologies there. But the idea is, let me just jump back to the alert center. Just to make this clear, I would click this button and it would bring me to a file, a page, excuse me, identical to this, except this part would already be filled in for me because it would be in regards to this exact incident. These would be the results you'd see. So every event around that file that triggered the alert. And then I could easily look at a specific file. I could actually add myself to it, right? So if I wanted to add myself to it, or I could change myself to the owner or give ownership to a manager. Again, in this case, I wouldn't be blocking the external sharing, right? I would just kind of be investigating. So I'd still be able to access the document if I added myself to it. If I just wanted to see who the document is currently shared with and possibly remove people from it, right? I could easily do that. So this would be kind of looking at who it's shared with. In this case, the file's been deleted, I believe, but you'd basically see people listed here, and then I could actually delete the file or the people that are shared on it. And another nice thing is if I had a result of a person shared here, and I wanted to say, let's learn more about Johnson at google.com. I want to see how many other files are shared with Johnson at google.com from my domain. I could actually just go to people and click on his name, and it would show me all the files that are currently shared with Johnson at google.com that are within my domain. So that's another way you can investigate like suspicious activity from a possible user. If you got one alert from that user, you could jump over here and sort of get a list of all the files that are currently shared with that user. So really powerful ways to investigate DLP. And that is pretty much how you investigate it, right? You're going to start at the alert center. You're going to look at your alert. You're going to possibly use the drop downs here if you want to really take advantage of notifying other administrators that you're working on it. You can add comments to the incident itself right here. This is all the similar alerts that are along the same lines. I got details about the document. I might have to investigate the alert and go to that same page we just talked about and add myself to the document before I can actually look at it. Maybe it's a public document and I can click on it here and easily access it. But if I want to pull back access, remove users on it, this is where I would jump. It would bring me over to this guy right here with it pre-populated about the file, and I can take the actions we just talked about. So if we kind of just jump back to the start of our conversation, what we've basically covered is the initial configuration, right? So things to consider here are you going to send out communications to your users about activity, about sharing external, sensitive information, because they might start to get warnings or possible files blocked that may have previously not been blocked. So you might want to do communications. Then you also want to consider if you're going to do a rule that will not affect your users' day-to-day activity. Do you not want to alert them yet or block anything? Are you just going to create a rule that will add information to these reports, right? Where you'll get alerts in the incident in the alert center, but the user won't notice anything. If you want to do that, you just go in here, you create your rule, and on the last page for what's the last page? Action, right? So whatever the action is, you just leave that blank. And then you get your metrics, you start to investigate the data. When you're comfortable with actually having an action, you come back in here and you can change that action to block or warn your users. And that's it. Make sure your admins are good to go on how to triage the alerts. Make sure that you do come in here periodically, or that you have the alerts emailing your super admins to triage those periodically, and that's it. That is DLP in a nutshell. So I'm going to stop right here. I think we have quite a bit of time left for any questions or anything else you'd like to discuss. So let's stop and see. I see no raised hands so far. All right, we got one raised hand. Awesome. Go ahead. I think you're unmuted, Sanjan.
Yeah, Cal, can you hear me?
I can. Great.
Okay, good. Let's see this example over here. Okay, so if I am sending and sharing information where I probably developed a document to show my external client some of these messages that you can see in the message, that URL, your incoming webhook URL, then I have a thread key that I said your thread key. So in my main document, internal document, I do have my URL set, I do have my thread key set, but I do want to create a rule when I share with my customers that I wanted to replace that with regex and give those kind of values rather than the real value of the URL or a thread key. Is that possible? Is that a use case for this kind of scraping through this kind of files and replacing these with the regex?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So just to clarify for everyone else, the great question that was asked was, can you use DLP to modify data before it actually goes out to the user? So if you take a file and it has a string of information and you share it out externally, can you have the rule find that data and then switch it, like change it to something like a short URL or something else? And unfortunately, the answer is no. DLP is really can only be used for alerting and allowing you to investigate reports. It's not. It can't modify any emails or data itself. There might be some custom dev that we could talk about, though, Sanjan, internally with Suitebriar, if that's a requirement you need. But yeah, that would be something we'd have to put on like outgoing gateway for mail or something. But yeah, not great question. Not possible.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you, Cal.
No problem. Any other questions? Again, thanks again for that great one. All right, seems like we don't have too many questions, which is fine. Oh, wow. Okay, Sanjan, you gave me the import command and everything. Yeah, it would be nice. It would be really nice to do that. Yeah, just replace the thread key. Yeah. So yeah, I'm going to stay here for a little bit longer. I'm happy to recover if you just wanted me to cover anything I've spoken about. If not, feel free to leave, or we will be following up with the recording. I can also provide these links as well, as I think what might be important, understanding these regular expression examples, should you wish to leverage those. And then these are kind of cool too, just if you want to create the similar ones that are used on that page we talked about. If I go back, it was under data protection on the top here. Yeah. So if you remember, they give you those metrics. You remember they give you the metrics, kind of like predefined ones, where it tells you if there's credit card numbers that your users might be using already. This guy right here, the data protection insights. These are the examples that they use to get those insights, and you can leverage these yourself. So that is another link that I think we should provide to you. All right, I see some people saying thank you and jumping. Thank you so much, Susan. The links will be great. Yeah, I really appreciate it. So again, feel free to jump off if you have no questions, and we will make sure that we update you with the recording, etc. Thanks, Michael. Thanks, Ahmed. Thanks, Victor. I really appreciate everyone's attendance. So, Courtney, I think you can stop the recording now. Thanks, Jonathan.
Okay, I'm stopping it now.